Well, hello again. Time for another game dev update. Big thanks to everybody who watched my teaser trailer. It's got quite a few views, comparatively speaking, and I'm very appreciative of that. There's so many things that I've done in the interim that I wanted to show off, but this video is actually not about that, although I do just want to show one thing off quickly, and that is, we'll just let it load. My computer is elderly, help. Switch a light on here. I've included a depth of field effect. So if we walk up to something, you'll see that what you're looking at is now in focus and the background is out of focus, and if I move, the perspective changes, which I think is pretty cool. Kind of ties into what I want to show off today. So I had this idea that I wanted to have areas of the game be examinable areas, and I also didn't want to do it through a series of menus. There's already a menu system set up in game. There's obviously the main menu where you can adjust settings. That's all still a work in progress as well. And then there's the inventory system, which I have already showed off. But unlike that, I wanted this to be kind of more organic. So what I wanted is for the player to be able to just walk up to an area, and if there's stuff to examine, the camera will kind of shift and then you can mouse over stuff and examine it. And I've got that set up here. So if we walk up to this desk, the character will say, look at all this cool old stuff. And if you mouse over something, you get a little description of it. And if you click on it, it zooms in, click on it, zooms out. And to exit this, you just walk backwards and you get moved back into your player perspective. Now I'm very happy with this, and it took a lot to get it working smoothly, but at the moment I've stopped what I was doing because I have three competing methods to do what I wanted to do, and I've got examples of all three still set up. I have a winner that I'm going to make the method for doing all of this. But I wanted to leave it like this so that I can make a video about it and show kind of the process. This is something I think that is universal to programming. So the first method involved this. Let me first show you the code. So when the character walks into this collision sphere over here, I'm trying to click on it, we run the following code. I'll just find it. We run this code. We overlap the sphere. We check to see, has the study desk been viewed before? If it hasn't, we display that text that says, look at all this cool old stuff. And the reason for that is I don't want the player to kind of say that every single time. I wanted them to say it the first time they view an area and then not again. Thereafter, we just do a fade between the player camera and the static camera, which is set up here. Here it is hanging in space. And once that's done, we show the mouse cursor and we set the game up so that it'll accept input from the UI. And the same is true in reverse. We hide the mouse cursor and set input to UI only. There's also a bunch of variables like this examining that I just use to kind of smooth things out, which I'll kind of get into. I don't want to make this a massively detailed thing because my initial idea was I'd already put all this stuff on the desk, placed it and everything, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I could just have you move your mouse over something, and when you move your mouse over something, it gets the position of that object, animates it when you mouse over, and then animates it further when you click on it, and then reverse animates it when you click on it again and when you move your mouse off it. And the reason for that is, the reason I wanted to get its position at the start is so that I can move stuff around and not have to go and change a bunch of values in a blueprint somewhere. So I didn't want individual blueprints for each item. I wanted each item to configure itself, in a manner of speaking. So the first method. Now, if I go back to the code here, you can see, like, I'm making this video at the point where I'd already discarded method 1, but I reset it up. So method 1 is you move your mouse over something, it gets the location, and it sets it to a variable. And then it sets another variable which is for mouse over, and all we're doing is we're adding 5 to the y-axis and then animating it. So in other words, when you move your mouse over something, it just kind of rises off the table, and then when you move your mouse off it, it moves back down onto the table. And the reason we're setting variables is because we're lerping, and when you lerp between two things and they're not set as variables before you start the lerp, the act of lerping changes the original value, which means that it kind of overshoots what it's supposed to do, which is something that I spent several days learning the hard way when I was trying to animate the sun moving in the sky. So I figured, okay, this will work fine. This is what happened. I have to switch the light on every time, sorry. So this is what happens. The object in question is this circuit board over here. So when you move your mouse over it, it's supposed to just animate up, and when you move your mouse off, it's supposed to animate down. But as you can see, it's buggy as hell. If you position your mouse on a corner, it does all this crazy stuff. As you can see, it's gradually getting higher and higher and higher and higher. Or it's getting lower and lower depending on where the mouse is. There's several things that cause this, right? The first is when you're moving the object, you're moving its collision box as well. And the mouse over code is just looking for the collision box. So you move your mouse onto it, it animates up, the collision box moves up. If the mouse is in just the wrong position, it'll start bouncing up and down, because as it moves up, the mouse is no longer on it, and then it moves down, and then the mouse is on it, and so it gets into this loop of triggering the mouse on and mouse off effects, such as it was doing just there. So this method clearly didn't work. You can see it's buggy as hell. The second method got a lot more complicated. So what we did was, I thought, okay, remember this is all just to avoid making individual blueprints for each item, right? So that I could just place stuff and have it animate. The next method was, I was like, okay, then I need to set the location of the object and the mouse over location at begin play, so that it's done, so that it can't do that overshooting and undershooting thing. Because the reason it was moving up and down like that is because every time the mouse goes over the object, we're getting its initial location. So if it does that janky thing where it bounces up and the mouse moves off, it's going to read wherever it ended up as the new beginning location, which is why it was moving around like that. So instead now we're setting up a series of structs. A struct is just a container full of variables, and here's what's in the struct for any one of these items. So we have the static mesh, we have its original location, and then its examined location. Now in iteration 2, what I did was I tried the same thing with the item hovering above the table and then moving down, but I still got the collision box problem. I then tried scaling it up and down instead of moving it, figuring, okay, that's going to not move the collision box as much. So for this, we're setting an examine position, its original location. The examine position is where it moves to when it's clicked. Then we have the notify message, the feedback text, whether it can be added to inventory or not, and then the 2 scale settings. And that ended up looking like this. We'll just go and switch the light on. So that ended up looking like this. You can see I've done a bit of experimenting with the amount of time it takes for the object to change in size. So this is quite short, it's 0.1 seconds. And you can see it kind of works. Now when you click on it, it shows up there. And I'd done a lot of work on this method. Like for instance, if you happen to have it open and you back away from the table while it's open, it will automatically move back to its position instead of hovering in space. Problem is, the collision box problem still isn't solved. There are certain edge cases where, you'll see this is now in a hovered state. Okay, I then added code to make it go back down to its original state if it ended up being hovered. But again, I'm putting out fires here that don't need to be there because I chose this method of doing things. So again, you have the same problem where the collision box is growing and shrinking, and the chances of an object ending up in a zoomed state like they are now and staying there, and then if you move your mouse over it, you'll see it shrink suddenly and then grows again. Now, I was saying to my kids the other day when I was showing them this mess, I said to them, the one I cannot handle, I can't abide it, I despise it. When you buy a AAA title for $60 and you see jankiness like this, it drives me mental. You get teams of hundreds of people working on a game for 5 years, and I won't name any names, Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, but you do tend to see this kind of jankiness at launch of some very, very big titles. And I can't handle it. And I'm determined that my game is not going to have any of this jankiness. So then I decided, okay, well, if the collision box is the problem. Now, remember, this takes place over like 3 days that I was going through this journey. I eventually decided, okay, well, I need a way for the object to move and not the collision box. And I spent a little while researching that. And then I came to a conclusion. Hey, I can just make a blueprint for every single item, which is what I should have done in the first place and saved myself 3 days. Yeah, real facepalm moment. And that's been my journey. So let me show you the blueprint. There's one item on this table that's set up as a blueprint and it works almost perfectly at this point. There's just 1 or 2 things I need to iron out. But like I said, I didn't want to end up deleting the code for any of the failed methods until I'd had a chance to make a video about it. So when you move your mouse over this, we're back to levitating the object because I just like the way it looked better. Nice and smooth. You can see the collision box is a bit bigger than the object, but that is also kind of necessary. When you click on it, now moves and rotates smoothly. The text displays properly. Text will stay on the screen and then disappear when you click on it again. Also, if you back away, it'll do the same thing. It'll unanimate itself. And if you happen to have your mouse over the object again when it zooms back out, it'll automatically see. Now there's still a little bit of jank there, but if I do this properly, it'll wait a second and then animate it. Now I want to get rid of that little delay. The only reason the delay is there is because of the delay involved in the text fade. You'll notice that the text will fade out first and then the thing will animate up. So I just need to move some nodes around. But yeah, so this is what the code ended up looking like in the blueprint. And now that this is done, I literally have to just copy and paste it and then replace whatever the static mesh is. In this case, it's an old hard drive with whatever I want, adjust the collision box accordingly, change a couple of values inside the blueprint, and there's another object done. This would have saved me days. It works smoothly. Like I said, there's a little bit of jank involved, but yeah, this is, I suspect, the programmer's journey. And I learned a bunch of stuff, and it makes me very happy. And that's about it. Like I said, there's many little things that I've added to the game. I can show you very briefly the code that handles the camera, if I can find it. Oh, here it is. The depth of field calculation. So we've got a master switch where I can switch it off if I so choose to. But what it's doing essentially is it's doing a line trace by channel, getting the location of the camera and then the location of whatever the line trace hits, and setting the camera's focus location based upon that. Now I want to do the same thing with this camera over here, but I have yet to implement that. So what I've done at the moment is I've got the aperture set really tiny, like the aperture set to 22, the f-stop, so that everything on the table remains in focus when you're zooming into stuff. But that is something I plan on implementing as well. And then as far as the rest of the code for this goes, there is a function somewhere, here it is, that runs that depth of field check every 0.2 seconds. So every 0.2 seconds an invisible ray shoots out of the player camera and focuses on whatever the camera is pointing at. That's how the depth of field thing works. Yeah, and then, like I said, there's other stuff, but I don't really have anything to show off at the moment. Hard at work. I'm also going to be using new video editing software, because making my teaser trailer with Magic's Vegas Pro version 15 turned out to be a nightmare. So I found out that DaVinci Resolve has a free version, and it's very, very nice. The workflow is incredibly different, but I'm going to finish recording this and then go off and experiment with that. So no idea how long the video is going to take. I'm learning new software. But anyway, as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.